Welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host, and I'm happy to be here today, Julie.
I'm happy for you to be here, too, even though we're at your house.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm happy. I like being at home.
Yeah. You're a shut-in.
I'm a shut-in, actually, you know. I don't like to go out. I look out in the world and see something scary and just go, oh, let's just do everything from home.
I'm going to stay in my luxurious penthouse.
Next time I do a piano gig, I'm just going to phone it in.
Just do it by Skype.
Yeah, Skype it in.
Yeah, that's
Here
what
I am. Your music tonight is performed by Richard Castle from his home.
At his house.
Here he is in his pajamas.
So how are you?
I'm doing great. I did something really interesting this last weekend.
Do tell.
You know, do you remember the show Laverne and Shirley?
Yes.
They had a 12-hour marathon.
I saw that.
At the Gary Marshall Theater in Burbank.
Yeah.
And of course, it was in honor of the late, great Penny Marshall, who played Laverne. So it was a 12-hour marathon.
Were you there for all 12 hours?
No.
Okay.
No, I went in the morning and stayed for a couple of hours. But, you know, they had said, Cindy Williams, who played Shirley, was going to be there, and that, you know, there'd be guests throughout the day.
Yeah.
I did not expect that while I was there, pretty much the entire living cast was there.
Was Michael McKean there?
Michael McKean was there.
Lovely.
And David L. Lander.
I was going to say, he's ill.
He's been ill for so long that I thought, there's no way he's going to be. He was there.
How is he?
You know, he's in like a little, like a scooter, you know.
Oh, okay.
You know, but he was with it. He was certainly with it. And the best part, I mean, you know, even the actress who played Big Rosie Greenbaum, do you remember this?
Big Rosie Greenbaum?
She wasn't a regular, but she was on the show a lot. She was sort of Laverne's nemesis she was kind of trashy, who married well. She had red hair. Anyway.
No, I don't remember
really
her.
funny.
Okay.
Really funny. She was there. The only one who wasn't there was Carmine Ragusa, the guy who played Carmine. But whatever, everyone else was there. And the best part was we're watching these episodes in a theater.
Yeah.
And I look over, and after the panel had been done talking, the actors who played Lenny and Squiggy were sitting there watching themselves from 40 years ago and laughing and,
awesome.
and hearing the audience laugh. And it was really moving to me, you know, because I grew up watching that show.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And it's still
I did too.
Some of them really still hold up.
Boo Boo Kitty.
Boo Boo Kitty.
Milk and Pepsi.
Yeah. I even to this day I say things
Vo-Dee-Oh-Doh-Doh.
Yeah, Vo-Dee-Oh-Doh. And I've got a hubba hiney, you know.
Oh my gosh,
right?
I love that.
So anyway, it was really fun, and it was one of those unique experiences that I'm so glad that I happened to have gone and experienced and brought back so many memories from childhood.
I drove by. I saw that they were doing that, and I was wondering what exactly it was.
Oh, it was really worth it.
I love it. You know, I worked with Michael McKean a few years ago at the Hollywood Bowl, and he was delightful, and he spoke so fondly of that show and those people that it was he's a very grounded person, very funny.
Well, he and the guy who played Squiggy, David Olander, said that they were performing like some little act at a party. And
that's how Lenny and Squiggy came about?
They were doing some little act, and it was, you know, a little blue, but it was fun. They were playing characters, and whoever it was, I think it might have been Penny Marshall, someone saw them and said, hey, do you want to come on our show?
I love it.
Yeah, we're starting a new show. It's a Happy Days spinoff, and that's how they got it. You know what? I go to parties all the time, and no one's ever asked me to be in anything.
Maybe you need to bring your sidekick.
Why don't you come with me? I am the sidekick. That's the problem.
The sidekick to your own sidekick.
You know what? I don't want to be on anybody's show. I just want to write their show.
There you go. Perfect.
Let's talk DNA,
Julie.
Let's
talk DNA, shall we?
Please.
Okay. So Suzanne Gilbert is she's an adoptee, and she's an acquaintance of mine. She's in the Facebook group. She's also an author, and she writes a lot of I'm going to do a book nook about her in a few weeks, but a lot of her books are adoption themed or adoptee themed. Truth be told, I've not read them yet, so I may be completely wrong. But I'm going to, and then she'll be in the
right. And if you have when you do a book nook, you'll have read it.
Yes, I won't do a book nook without reading it.
Yes.
I promise, Suzanne.
Do you like? I mean, just as a side note, do you ever watch some of the talk shows when they have someone on and they're talking about either a book or a movie that someone's like trying to plug.
And they clearly have not read it. Yeah. Although I don't know how they read. Like sometimes they get the book the night before. How do they read it?
I don't know. But, you know, when you listen to Terry Gross on NPR, she's always read it. And it's amazing because she talks about having spent the night, you know, the night before reading this book because she knew she was going to have a guest on, and it's a one-on-one interview and it's an hour long, and she needs to make sure she knows. That would put me to sleep. I listen to most of my books now while I'm going about my day, because if I am relaxed enough to read a book, that means I'm relaxed enough to fall asleep, and off I go. So I like to listen to them in my car and fall asleep.
That's dangerous.
I have a lot of accidents, but I enjoy my books on tape.
You need one of those self-driving cars.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. So Suzanne, Suzanne wrote on her page, she'd found, she said, is the New York Times on the wrong side of history in the ethicist column. So there's a ethics column in the New York Times, obviously. And she said, in the 40 plus years since the UK restored adoptee rights, more and more North American states and provinces are following suit. Yet the ethicist columnist routinely and anachronistically promotes secrecy and lies when a reader asks about adult adoptee search and reunion. He comes from a place of personal fear and factual error, and not from a place of rationalism or compassion. So here's an example. A reader asks, more than 40 years ago, I was adopted and I closed adoption. After about 15 years ago, I made contact with my birth mother, with whom I now have a good relationship. My birth father declined to meet me. The stated reason, he didn't want his younger daughter to know he had fathered another child. I accepted his decision. In the intervening years, I've avoided genetic tests, which I would otherwise like to take, so as to not out my birth father to his relatives.
Yeah.
I now have a child of my own. It often occurs to me that it may not be ethical for my birth father to conceal my existence from my half-sister and deprive us and subsequent generations of any relationship. Would it be right or wrong, or neither, for me to reach out to her? Is it unethical for me to take a genetic test because the companies then offer them might inform relatives of our connection? Well, they wouldn't inform them, but it's right there. No, but
why is she protecting him? You know, if she wants to take a DNA test.
You know how I feel about this.
Well, I mean, that sounds, it's very kind of her, I guess, in a way, but in a naive way, because it's sort of putting his rights ahead of hers.
Oh, of course.
Or his needs or wants.
Absolutely. And guess what? The sister's an adult, and, you know. So let me tell you, this was the response that came from, I guess it's Kwame Anthony Appiah, who is the ethics columnist for the Times.
Okay.
Here's the response. People are now inclined to favor more open adoption processes, but we should still try to respect past agreements, even ones we might wonder at today. And there are reasons for not contacting your half-sister. It would let her know that he hadn't been forthcoming with her. The daughter might well be angry about his having kept his secret. He may not have known either. But she might also take consolation in the discovery of a new half-sibling. If she didn't, she would only have to tell you she didn't want a relationship. Right. But you also envisage a situation in which your half-sister discovers your relationship via genetic and genealogy databases. And here's where things get complicated. There's a principle usually dated to Thomas Aquinas. He quotes the Catholic Church in this. I don't know why. Your father chose a closed adoption. Sometimes the children of closed adoptions never learned they were adopted, and so they have no reason to think twice about being genotyped. It's a contingent fact that you do know. It's worth observing that not everyone will be on one of these databases, so there is no guarantee that your half-sister will find you this way. So he is basically saying, I don't think you should out him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The part about contacting the half-sister, I mean, that's really her call. If she's an adult.
Absolutely her call.
If she's an adult,
yes,
then it's her call. You know, she can choose or not. But yeah, I see it would affect his relationship with his daughter. But so I'm less comfortable with that, but I'm completely comfortable with this girl going on, this woman, I'm sorry,
taking a
DNA test.
Of course.
You know, that seems...
Of course.
Of course.
A horse is a horse, of course.
Yes, and a foal is a foal.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think she is a fool if she does not.
No.
Yes, if she does not go.
That was
and
a different episode.
Yes. If she doesn't take a DNA test if she wants one, and
That's crazy.
It's sort of saying like, well, my children, like she mentioned, she has kids of her own, right?
Yeah.
Then her kids have the same
It's
rights.
like passing on the same limitations that she herself had by being in a closed adoption.
Right.
About knowing
like it's
the,
forever.
I can't.
As if you're
I can't with
as
this.
an adoptee, you never have the right to share your story,
Right.
the truth,
Right. Yeah.
which is, as we know, is in her genes.
Exactly.
She has the truth, and she can do with it what she wants. Whether or not she feels like she wants to interrupt this her birth father's life. That's her
Lies,
own,
you mean?
life
Interrupt
and
his
lies.
Yeah. So let me see. A gentleman named Mark Furman responded. I think he's a friend of Suzanne with a letter to the editors of the New York Times. And he said, Kwame Anthony Appiah tells an adoptee that she did the right thing respecting her birth father's wishes to not have contact with him or the rest of his family, saying we should try and respect past agreements. Mr. Appiah falls into the familiar logical fallacy that bedevils adoptees whose birth records are sealed. The fact is, there was at least one party to that adoption agreement who did not have a say in the matter, the adoptee. Yep. She should not be bound by any agreement made between two other people. Each adoptee has the innate right to know her own heritage, for better or worse. It's not up to the adoptee to provide protection for her grown birth parents who made a decision that impacted the rest of her life. Her birth father's other children, as well as the rest of his extended family, are also her family, and she has a right to know them on her own terms. Maybe they will welcome her as her birth mother has. Maybe they will reject her, but it is not her job to avoid contact out of a false responsibility to protect her birth father from the reality that he has another daughter out there, one he relinquished at birth.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
I mean, I'm trying to think back because I remember when we were talking about people who had donated sperm or eggs, as Renee Colvert, who had been on our podcast, had talked about this, and that at the time she was assured that it was completely anonymous and that she wouldn't be contacted and that kind of thing. And and I was uncomfortable with the fact that like something that you had signed, 10, 20, 30 years ago that could come back and haunt you because they changed their policy. Like, oh, well, now we're going to tell everybody your name. So, but the DNA thing to me is different, and especially with adoption, maybe I'm not the right person to ask about this because I see Renee's point in that, like, I signed this agreement and I was supposed to be anonymous, but then I also think that this woman that we're talking about from the letter of the New York Times deserves the right to do her own DNA test and speak to her or reach out to her half sister.
Absolutely.
So where does that put me?
That puts you right in the middle of.
Well, no, you know what I mean. Like I don't know. I'm trying to work it out here as I speak, and I'm trying to figure out.
I hear from biological parents all the time. I was promised this. Actually, nobody ever signed anything.
Right.
That said nobody's going to contact you. They were told that,
right?
Because they were also told go home and forget about it. You'll be fine, which is also not true.
Well, what about we also talked about the difference between people who were adopted and people who were donor conceived. Donor conceived. So I mean, and not saying that people who are donor conceived don't have the right to know their genetic history.
Yes,
but there's a that given up for adoption, I know that's going to trigger some people, the given up thing. But like that's a choice that somebody's made, whereas to give up a child, whereas the person who is donating is trying to help somebody.
That child is a human in their own right.
Right.
And it just doesn't make sense that because somebody else made a deal that they have to suffer. And suffering, a lot of us do.
I completely agree with you. And everyone has the right to know the truth about themselves and where they came from, and their, especially this day and age, their genetic history. Just even if it has to do with disease and whatnot. What do they carry?
Right. I did an interview the other day with a lady who we'll hear from in a couple of weeks. Whose daughter found her using DNA. but she repeatedly said, and she is not upset that her daughter found her at all. She's very happy. But she kept saying, I was promised that they wouldn't, and at one point I asked her, I said, do you feel like that promise was broken? And she said, oh, no, because I know that it was DNA anyway that did it. But, a lot of people that I contact say, but I was promised. I'm like, it had nothing to do with them. This is science.
And it's funny because I know people who were adopted who didn't seek out their birth parents, but their birth parents sought them out. Right?
Yeah, that doesn't happen very much, but it definitely happens.
No, and
yes.
I know a specific case. And what I remember thinking was that he never had a promise made to him, like, that he wouldn't be contacted either. So again, everyone has the right to do what they want to do.
And everybody has a right to refuse contact.
Exactly.
Right.
He could have said, you know what, I never wanted to meet you. I was perfectly happy with my adopted family. But he didn't.
Right.
He's happy to have a relationship with his birth mother, but she is not his mother.
Right. And also, by the way, you can love your parents, your adoptive parents, and still want to know your biological family. That is perfectly normal and acceptable. One does not discount the other. I'm just putting that out there.
No,
a lot of people think that, though.
I think I understand that.
Yeah.
And I understand that if you were an adoptive parent and that you went and adopted a child and gave them a life and, and they became your child, that seeing someone come in from the outside who has some kind of claim on your child would be perceived as a threat.
Absolutely.
But I don't know anybody who has been found or has found their birth parents who's ever said, oh, well, they're so much better than my family or anything like that,
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there are, but from the adopted people I know.
I'm sure I've read things on some of the groups online. There are some adoptees that literally want to change their birth certificates back to their biological because they had such a terrible time of it as a child.
But the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
And you can always imagine that your life would have been so much better if it had done.
I would not say that is certainly a minority, an extreme minority.
Right.
But it certainly happens. And there are also people that are looking for more than, say, what I was looking for. I see a lot of people talking about, why won't they accept me? Why won't they love me? And I feel for them because I never felt that way. I was like, and of course I have a thick skin too.
But you were looking for truth. You weren't looking for
love.
someone. You weren't looking for someone to welcome you and say, "Oh my God, my baby," right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't have objected to it, but I certainly wasn't expecting it. The key is to go in with an open mind, really.
But you were also not unhappy in the home that you were raised, and so that you had a good relationship with your parents.
Right.
So,
I mean, I did not have a perfect, we've talked about this before.
Does?
Right, exactly. And I've talked about the fact that my parents and I were very different people and we didn't understand each other. That is just a circumstance that happened.
Right.
And happens with a lot of adoptees, and some it doesn't. Yeah. But we didn't understand each other, but we understood that we didn't understand each other.
Yeah.
And that was a whole other added layer that we were like, well, I guess we're different.
Yeah. And quite frankly, my father and I had nothing in common growing up. And, he, as far as I know, is my birth father because I was not adopted. But,
you look just like him too. I just looked at a picture of it.
Well, when I was young, I looked more like my mom. And the older I get, I see my dad in me. It's weird. It's a strange transformation when I look in the mirror and see my dad staring back at me, and then I realize I'm looking at a picture of him and I need to look in the mirror. Yeah.
It's not going to help you at all.
That's what happens when you get old. You mistake pictures for mirrors.
I have somebody that I'm working with right now. He had found he did his DNA. But he contacted the agency that he was adopted through a couple years ago, and they contacted his biological mother for him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he basically told them, I just want medical stuff. I want the truth. She doesn't want it, blah, blah, blah. Well, so she responded with, Yeah, no, I don't want any contact. My health is fine, and don't ever contact me again.
I love that my health is fine.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank
That
God I've
helps.
got a clear
Thank
bill of
God.
health.
I know. And he said that she also sent some sort of illegal document, like a cease and desist type thing, barring them from contacting
See, that would hurt. That would hurt.
very much. And I've never heard of that, frankly. So I need to talk to him. I'm gonna ask him to send me a copy of that. I want to see what she sent.
Yeah, because if you were going to issue some kind of cease and desist or something like that,
Well, there has to first of all have been some kind of harassment,
Right, that's
in the
the
first
thing.
place,
That's what
and
I'm
they
saying.
contacted once. And why would you send a legal? I don't know. I need to get to the bottom of this, but I found that fascinating.
I know that is fascinating.
Yeah. So on that note, let's take a break.
If you're enjoying Cutoff Jeans, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, I've been wondering about how one would obtain somebody's DNA in the not with a swab or through a DNA company, but to obtain their DNA from in another way, like off of something or through blood or something.
You mean like after you leave, if I scraped this microphone and said, oh, this Julie breathed on this, and so I
Yes.
could get her DNA this way.
Right, or through a medical situation. You'll see.
Oh, okay. All right.
But how to get that changed or turned into an autosomal file, which is what the most of the DNA companies use.
Okay. Oh, you mean to send that sample in because you're not giving...
To use that sample, right. So say, okay.
Because you couldn't do it into the kit. The way they do it is you have to do
Correct.
it with the saliva.
Yes. So let me tell you, I was on DNA Detectives Down Under, and a lady posted something which I found very interesting. Her mother passed away recently, and she hadn't been able to get her DNA. And she was treated for cancer. I'll read a little bit of it. Mum's DNA was stored at the Familial Cancer Center at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, where she was treated for cancer. So they store some of the DNA. They agreed, in principle at least, to release her DNA to us. The biggest problem was they couldn't locate a lab to genotype her pure DNA and create raw autosomal DNA text file.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I guess I should have led with that.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. And so that they could upload it to GEDmatch. Intuitively, she felt such a service should exist. Me too. But she couldn't find one.
This is what you do. This is how you become an entrepreneur. You go, oh my gosh,
There's a need for
there's a
this.
need for this. I'm going to create or find somebody who can create this.
Right.
If it doesn't already, does it exist?
Well, listen.
Okay.
So
I'm getting ahead of myself. No,
Stop
tell
it.
me now,
Tell
Julie.
me
I
now.
need to know. I can't wait.
So she contacted GEDmatch, who is we all know what GEDmatch is, but it's run by these two guys, these two scientists. And she was astonished when Curtis Rogers answered within the hour and recommended contacting Jocelyn McBain from a company called To the Letter DNA in Australia. It hadn't been launched yet, but it's one of those companies that does artifact testing that we've talked about.
Like when someone licks a stamp and you want your
Exactly.
grandfather's DNA off the stamp from the postcard he sent you.
That's right.
20 years ago. Yes.
Right. So Jocelyn agreed to try to do it for her. And so the DNA was protracted. And when it was a little more difficult, they tried something else, but she worked with them to do this for her, which was...
Because I wonder, doesn't it degrade a little bit over time as well?
I mean, a little bit. It had been stored in a medical facility, and I'm sure it goes to a lab situation, so they know how to handle it.
Sure, and that's
And it
probably
wasn't-
the
and it-
optimal situation.
Exactly. Precisely.
As opposed to a postage stamp, which could have been in a drawer or in a book or something for
Right.
years. Right, yeah.
Right. So Jocelyn worked with them, and she helped them over every hurdle and was finally able to do that for them.
Wow.
And now they have their mother's DNA uploaded to GEDmatch
Oh, that's nice.
alongside her half-brother that she never knew. So she was thanking To the Letter DNA. I was like, what is To the Letter DNA? Yeah. So, of course, I checked it out. And it is indeed, it's an up and running company that does... that takes lifts the DNA off of stamps and old letters.
There goes my entrepreneur idea.
Yep, it's already been done. It's in Australia, though.
Oh.
But so I contacted them and said, hey, do you take submissions from the U.S.? And they're like, of course we do. So I looked at the website. I'll tell you a little bit about them. They visually assess whether they see problems up front with the type or condition of the seal or stamp, and then they'll email you to advise you whether or not to send the item. So you take a picture of it first and send it to them, and so they can tell you whether they think it's worth it to try to extract DNA off of it.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So the extraction cost in and of itself is $140, and that's not refundable because they're doing the work. The genotyping is $621.50, and that includes the extraction cost, I believe. If they're unable to find to use usable data, they will refund part of it. Oh, wait. The total cost is $781.50.
Okay.
And that includes the $140 extraction cost. If they can't find usable DNA, they will refund $621.50 to you. So you're just spending $140.
And you're out the cost of the stamp.
The $140.
And the postage stamp that you're trying to get the sample off
I
of.
see what you did there.
Although technically, if it's a postage stamp that was sent to you, you never paid for that postage stamp in the first place.
Yes.
It was your grandfather's stamp.
Precisely.
So, never mind.
Right.
Like Emily Latella. Never mind.
So they'll create, if they can get the DNA off of your artifact, they will send you a raw data file, just like the ones that we get from Ancestry and 23andMe.
And you can do with
and
it
you can
what
upload
you,
it to GEDmatch, and there you have it. Yeah. So I think they just started doing this in December.
And I would imagine that the more people that do it and the more companies that begin, and perhaps
it
some entrepreneur in America.
Possibly more affordable. I'm surprised it's been done in other countries before here.
I know. You would think that is something that there's a need for, that people want, especially now that with the popularity of the DNA testing.
Yeah. Well, and more, I'm excited about this. It's a little dear for me, but I do have some letters that I would like to get some DNA extracted off of.
Really?
But I might have to wait for it to get a little more affordable.
Right, sure, yeah.
But it's a very, very cool thing. So I'm excited about it. So that is To the Letter DNA, and they're an Australian company. You can find, they have a Facebook page, a Facebook group, and you can check out. They're constantly posting on there. They do it by batches, I guess. Once they get enough submissions, they'll add that batch, and I think they're on their 4th batch right now.
I guess why would you want to have, say, your grandfather, your great grandfather's DNA lifted from something like that? Like, what would that give you if it is your grandfather? Mm-hmm. You're going to have your own DNA tested. So
right.
in other words,
but his is much more concentrated and it's closer to the lineage that you're looking for.
So it's like going back in time.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. That's so interesting.
Exactly. And it also maybe you question whether or not he was your grandfather.
Right.
Or maybe somebody told you this is probably your grandfather, but we have no way of knowing.
Okay.
But we have some letters.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to think of circumstances.
Yes.
Of course, now I'm sitting here like looking at the closet going, I wonder what I've got in there from old relatives that I might want to have something tested.
Well, anything that they spit on is basically it. So,
yeah.
That's why letters are so good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited about that.
I always spit on my letters before I send them.
Yeah.
I do that with my emails as well. That's why I always have to clean my screen.
Is that why that bottle of Windex is right next to you?
Haven't you ever heard me send off an email and go, Fie on you.
Okay. So, that's that. I'm excited about it.
That's great. I love that.
Should we? Yeah?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Jeans, the new podcast starring Julie Dixon-Jackson.
Okay, guys, we're back. It is story time. If it seems a little quiet to you, it's because Rich is no longer here. Actually, I'm no longer there. I'm recording this at home. Let me see. This week's story time is a lady named Anna, who is a bio mom. I'm so happy she agreed to talk to us. This is part of a series, like a 3-part series, in which I'm going to talk to a bio mom, her biological daughter, and the 2 half-sisters of the biological daughter. And they're going to tell us their journey from their perspective. So we're going to start with Anna, and she's a lovely lady, and have a listen to her story, and I'll catch you on the other side. Hey guys, I have a lovely lady named Anna on the line who is a part of our Rashomon style adoption story that we're doing this week, or I guess this month. This is Anna. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Anna, why don't you just go ahead and start telling us your story from where you feel like is the beginning of it.
Okay. I was dating a young man when I was 20 years old, and we were planning on getting married, and I got pregnant. And when I got pregnant, then I found out somebody else was pregnant.
Oh.
And he had to marry her for some legal reasons.
Oh, wow.
And so I was kind of left in the cold. But being 50 years ago, I talked to an adoption agency and asked what to do. And they explained everything. And so anyway, I gave birth to Kari in November 1968.
Okay, can I just stop you there just for a second? So what is this something that, were your parents with you through this, or is this something you were very secretive about?
I was alone. I lived alone.
Oh, wow.
I grew up in a very difficult childhood.
Okay.
And I was living on my own, and I was working as a nurse, and I saved money. And when I started to show, I took a leave of absence. Now, my work knew, but not all my coworkers knew.
Okay.
And so I just stopped working, and I was just going to make it through it and then go back to work. And
did you have any friends or a support system at all?
I had friends.
Okay.
I had a lot of good friends.
Okay, so and that were around you that...
Right,
okay.
right.
Okay, good. Sounding a little... Okay.
It was at the time, a time of year, a time in everything that, this was not a common thing.
Yes.
And so...
Or it was, and just nobody ever talked about it. Everything was hidden.
Everybody went somewhere or did something. Mm-hmm. And there was, no abortion, but I wouldn't have had an abortion anyway.
Right.
But I had some good friends. And then an aunt found out and wanted me to be with her for the last 2 months or month and a half. So I lived with an aunt until I gave birth.
This was one of your parents' siblings?
Yes.
Okay, and she kept that secret?
It wasn't like secret, but
okay.
It was. We didn't advertise it.
Okay, so but you weren't really in contact with your parents at the time.
No, I wasn't in contact with my parents. My mom left when I was 4.
Gotcha.
And my dad was exiled from the state, basically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I had lived with my grandma in my high school years. And as soon as I was old enough, soon as I went through nursing, I left and I was on my own because that's just the way it was.
You grew up very early.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I grew up very early.
Okay.
And my grandmother said, when you walk out the door and leave, you never come back.
Wow.
So when I walked out the door, I never came back.
All right.
Okay. And so I went through it. You do it.
You do it. Yep.
Now, my siblings knew.
Okay.
But I had a brother and him and I were very close. But other than that, and my aunt or my uncle, aunt and uncle, they took care of me until I had the baby. And then when Kari was adopted, I got an apartment and lived on my own.
Okay.
And then I moved to California. and because of another nurse, and wanted to go to California. And I said, oh, I have no ties here. And away we went. And in California is where I met my husband.
Okay. How long did it take before you told him this story? Just curious.
When I realized we were getting serious.
Okay.
And then I said, well, there's some things you need to know about me.
Gotcha.
And he said, okay. And then I told him that all the records were sealed, and that I would probably never see my child.
Okay.
And I had requested certain things. I requested that she go to a Christian home, and I knew she did. And that's all I had in a say in anything.
Okay.
You know.
So you didn't get to choose anybody, and you certainly didn't know. Did you know what state they were in?
No. I knew it was close to Nebraska.
Okay.
But I didn't really know where it was.
Sure.
And they didn't tell you those things back then.
Yeah.
And once she was adopted, it was like done.
Yep.
Okay.
Did they tell you to forget about it and move on?
Actually, not too much like that.
Okay.
I had some issues afterwards, hormones, stuff like that, and regret and trying to figure out what to do. And so they talked to me, a counselor there talked to me for a couple times.
Okay.
And that was it. It was kind of like, okay, get on with your life. And so I did. And I married my husband the following year, actually in September the following year. And we got pregnant 3 years later, approximately. And I had Jessica.
Okay.
And I never talked to anybody, never did anything. I never told anybody except my doctors because they needed to know.
Sure.
I have very easy deliveries, and I wanted him to know that my first delivery was very fast, so that they would be aware. But they too did not say anything to anybody. They kept everything quiet, and so I just lived my life knowing that she was there somewhere, and that I would probably never know till I got to heaven.
Okay.
And I had 3 children, Jessica, Dwayne, Rebecca. And
okay, so let's talk about when you first told your children.
Okay.
I believe that's something that you did do, correct?
Right. But Jessica found out before because she talked to a cousin. Right. I didn't have a lot of relationship with my family. We're all kind of, we lived such a hard life.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a whole lot in it. And a cousin got a hold of Jessica. And she said, oh, your mom had a baby. Well, Jessica was quite surprised because she didn't know. So then I told her, and then I can't remember exactly the time schedule, but my husband and I were struggling a little bit in our marriage. And I told my kids, and I told his family, and I told people, this is part of my life. And so when Rebecca was married, her husband actually got a private detective trying to find the lost sister, And
can I ask you, how did you feel about that, about your daughter and her husband taking the reins on that?
I didn't care.
Okay.
It was okay.
Okay.
It was okay. I remember everything supposedly was sealed, and I never wanted it to be so secretive.
Yeah.
But my husband really kind of wanted it secretive. And anyway, we just went on. My kids knew, his family knew, and then I just went on with my life. And then I think it was September, my daughter did her DNA earlier, and She wanted me to do mine. But I hadn't. My brother did his, and we were talking about different things. And another cousin did hers. And then all of a sudden, Jessica calls me and goes, "Mom, I think we found my sister."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, how?" And actually that was how I asked, and she told me that she'd done DNA, and Kari had done DNA.
Yeah.
And they said that you have a very close match. It's probably a sister.
Right.
So,
So did you know she was taking the DNA test before?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you know that it would be that
Well,
that could happen?
I had no idea, never even thought about it.
Oh, okay.
I really hadn't.
Yeah.
And then my cousin also did her DNA, and they contacted her as well.
Okay.
And so she contacted my brother, and because I didn't really know this cousin real well, I'm telling you, my family was fractured.
Sure.
And my brother contacted me after Jessica contacted me. And I had actually already called Kari.
Oh, okay.
So as soon as Jessica contacted me, I called Kari.
Okay, you called her right away.
I called her right away.
Tell me about what that was like. How did it feel as you were dialing that number?
Kind of with an anticipation.
Was it kind of abstract?
But the thing is that I didn't know Kari. This is 50 years down the way.
Right.
And it was like talking to a stranger.
Uh-huh.
I met my mother after 21 years. She was gone. And the whole relationship was like a stranger. Tried to have a relationship was very difficult.
Right.
She had her problems, and she gave us all up, And so I expected a similar type thing. Okay. And I'm going to have a contact, but this contact is not probably going to turn into anything, so to speak. So anyway, she was very excited. And so that made excitement everywhere. Okay. Made me feel good. She wasn't angry with me.
Yeah.
And because she wasn't angry with me, made things a lot easier. And I want you to know that I know the Lord very well. Mm-hmm. And my husband's a pastor. I've worked in the ministry for years. And I believe in God's timing.
Right.
God's timing is always perfect. Mm-hmm. And he never makes mistakes. And I felt that this is what, I'm sorry, starting to cry, that this is what God wanted at this time in my life.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And so I was very excited then.
Right.
Now, Kari and I have not met. We talk on the phone a lot. And we're still getting to know each other. She's starting to open up a little bit more.
Okay.
She talks a lot to her sisters. And they text a lot, probably a lot more than her and I do, which I think is really good, because it's one thing that my girls always wanted was to find their sister.
Yeah.
And they did. And I am so happy for them.
Yeah.
My son's a little bit different. He talked to her. He's okay, mm-hmm. And he's not like the girls.
Yeah, that's very typical, I find.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so, it was the same way with my brother. My brother, when I found my mother, he was like, okay,
yeah,
tell me about her, but I don't want to meet her.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I had a fair relationship with my mother. And so, Kari is part of me, and I love that.
Yeah.
And someday I hope that we will be able to meet, mm-hmm. live on totally opposite sides of the country.
Right.
And that is a goal of mine. And so but we do talk and we do share, and we're still getting to know each other over the phone, so to speak.
Sure.
So I'm not at all unhappy that this has happened.
Oh,
In fact, I never thought that I would ever know her till I went to heaven.
yeah.
And it was part of my life that was in the past, and that was the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have not put an ad in the paper and told everybody.
Right.
As things happen, I do.
Mm-hmm. It's nothing you're advertising, but nothing you're keeping a secret.
Right. I'm not ashamed.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody has a past.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. And so I'm just very happy that I have this opportunity and to get to know a young lady that I never thought I would ever get to know.
Yeah.
And she looks just like me.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, you would, my girls look like their dad.
Uh-huh.
My son is a mixture, but Kari looks just like me. It's really weird.
How does it feel? When you first saw a picture of her, what was that like?
I was like, oh my goodness. I sure can't deny this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, it made it very, very happy. And of course, Kari asked.
Real, probably.
Yeah. And then Kari asked, you know, about her father. And I told her his name. I told her I have no idea where he is or what he's doing.
Okay.
Because when he left me,
he left her.
that was it.
Right.
And she said the same thing, basically. She goes, he abandoned you, so he abandoned me.
Exactly.
And so that was just the way it was.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because this is so new for her, have you thought that at some point she might
if she wants to.
Yeah.
I told her if she wanted to, it's fine. He was Polish, 100%.
Okay.
And when she did her DNA, she wanted to figure out where that came from. Because she always felt she was like Scandinavian, because that comes from me.
Right.
And so she found out and she wanted to know. And I said, well, he was 100% Polish.
Okay.
So, you know, I told her I can give you his name, but that is all I know.
I found it interesting. You said that you thought that everything was sealed. Do you have reason to believe that anything was unsealed?
No.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
And then, you know, she explained who adopted her, and her grandpa was a pastor, and he found out about her. And so they adopted her.
Okay.
And so Kari grew up, as per my request, in a Christian home.
Absolutely. So that's nice. It's nice to know that was fulfilled.
It was for me.
Yes.
Yes. And you know, like I said, God's timing's always perfect, and He plans and He leads, and I believe that He put Kari where He put Kari. I'm just thankful for people who want to adopt and want to take children. I could not ever have taken care of Kari as a single mom alone with nobody. I mean, I could have, but it would not have been easy for her or me.
So it's wonderful that you've received this peace and knowing that you did the right thing.
Without a doubt, I did.
Anna, thank you so much for talking to me.
You're welcome, and thank you for putting this out, and maybe it would be peace for somebody that listens, and an answer or an ability to look further into things that they may be afraid to do.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay, so that was Anna's story. She's so sweet, and I so appreciate her talking to me and opening up. And I like the idea that she wants to help other biological mothers release the stigma that they feel and the shame. So thanks so much, Anna. Next week, we're going to talk to, I think, Kari. I think her daughter that she gave up for adoption. And then the following week, the two other daughters of her full daughters. No, they're all her full daughters, the half-sisters of Kari. Whatever. Anyway, thanks again, Anna. I appreciate it. All right, so we're out of here. Guys, if you would like to tell your story, there are so many stories to tell, and I would like nothing more than to hear them and to share them with the audience. So please reach out to me at Jules Jackson on Twitter. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Cutoff Jeans Podcast, on Facebook, Cutoff Jeans Podcast. Also, you can send me an email at jules@cutoffjeans.com. Also, Rich, since he's not here, I'm going to plug him. On Twitter at Castle Songs, and also richardcastle.com for all your songwriting and musician requirements. So that's it, guys. We will see you next week, and I hope you have a good one. And always remember, the truth is in your jeans.